Welcome, welcome, welcome to Straight Talk with Shelia. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining me on a weekly basis. Thank you for your commitment. Today, I just want to share for a few minutes on the question, who is your daddy? Yeah, it is Father's Day, and I wanted to share a little bit about my experience with my father. I wanted to acknowledge the lessons I learned from my father. It is so important that we spend time in learning lessons. So, my father was the kind of person that I expected to be warm and fuzzy. And yes, I was disappointed in the areas of my expectation. My father did not represent the daddy that most of you may have, but he was a good person. My father, he provided for his daughters. He provided room and board and shelter. And he sent us to school. He gave us the experience of a nice restaurant. When we went out, we couldn't order like hamburgers or the regular food that we eat at home. He wanted us to have an experience that we didn't have. But I so desired and so wanted a daddy. Yes, a daddy. And many of you may have an experience to have your daddy. But about 3 years ago, I was talking to a young lady and I asked her, how's your father? She said, who? That sperm donor? And I was taken aback when she called him a sperm donor. So I leaned in a little bit to listen and to understand a little bit more as to why she would classify him as a sperm donor. And then she went on to say, he doesn't come by, he doesn't call, he doesn't respond when I call. He's not here. He's an absentee landlord. Yes, that's another name that people have given to their fathers who just did not show up in their lives. And even though I wrestled with the things I missed from my father, I had to stop and think about the lessons and the value that my father gave me. Yes, I was missing the lovey-dovey, fluffy stuff that I wanted, the affection from my father. And those are behaviors that unfortunately it tells you as a woman how to pick a spouse. Because the behavior that my father didn't give me, that's what I was looking for in a spouse. But what I learned from my father, that even though he didn't give me that warm, fuzzy, lovey-dovey stuff, he provided for me. And many of you fathers out there, you stayed, and thank you for staying. You provided, and thank you for providing. You provide food and shelter. You may not be that lovey-dovey father, but you are a father. You may have a daughter, and that daughter, things may not have been worked out well for the beginning, and your daughter gave you another chance, second and third chances to fix it. So now you are daddy to her. But I want to pause for a moment to point you to my Abba Father. Yes, many of us have a problem with the horizontal relationship or earthly father. And because we have a problem with the horizontal relationship, we tend to have a problem with the vertical relationship. But I want you to know that my Bible tells me that my Abba, yes, my daddy, he values me. He knows who I am. And my father, in his own way, valued who I was. But as I was growing up, I really didn't see it. It took time for me to find out who he was. And then one day I sat down and I dissected the behaviors that my father displayed. And then I looked at him through different lenses. And I'm calling you to look at your dad, to look at your father through different lenses. And the things that I learned from my father was, one, he shared what he had. You cannot give what you don't have. So what my father had, that's what he gave me. And I want you to spend some time in that area realizing that your father may not be the lovey-dovey type, and he may not grant the expectations that you have and that you put on him. But give him credit. That's my second point. Give him credit for who he is and what he has done. Yes, he shared. That's my third point. My father shared who he was. And it's so important that we see people for who they are from their perspective. And my next point is, because I have in relationship with the vertical, with my Heavenly Father. It helps me to understand that my Heavenly Father fills in the gap that I don't have or didn't have with my father, my earthly father. My father have passed away, and before he passed away, I was able to come to terms with who he was and what I expected and what I wanted. And even though I didn't get it, I understand that he could have only given me what he had, what he was able to offer me. So I ask you today to look at your dad, to look at your father through different lenses. Yes, your father might have earned the right to be called daddy because he treats you well like a lady. He's warm and fuzzy inside. But I want you to know that even though you may be disappointed in what you expected, I want you to see your father as more than a sperm donor. I want you to look at him through different lenses and understand that what he had, that's what he gave you. And forgive him if you need to. Whatever it is that you need to do to come to terms with moving from father to daddy. And if he never moves, understand that the vertical relationship will fill the gap. For you fathers that are out there holding down the fort, you are staying with your kids, you're providing for them, you're paying the bills, you're giving them the gifts in the whatever areas that they need, whether it's the gift of higher education, of love and understanding, or encouragement, whatever it is that you're giving. I want you to know, I want to say to you, Happy Father's Day. Thank you for staying. I want to give you an E for effort. And the E for effort because you stayed, because you are doing the best you can. It is so important that we understand that the people, the male that God has put in our lives, we need to respect them. Some of you fathers may be fathers who are not just fathers to your children, but you're fathers to kids in your neighborhood. Or you may be a blended family and you're a father to a child that does not belong to you per se, but you love the mother and you love the children or the child also. It is so important that we give you kudos. So I stopped by here to say to you, thank you so much for staying. Thank you for doing all the things that you did. And if we have wronged you because we expected something and didn't get it, I want to say, I'm sorry. I want to now look at you, fathers, through different lenses, as I had to do with mine. I offer you the same. I am your coach. I am your sister, shining light to the daddy that's deep down inside of you. Yes, some of you may have made mistakes, but I want you to know there are possibilities for you to become the daddy that your daughter needs, or your son. Whatever it is, whatever it takes, use today to be a turning point in your father-daughter relationship or your father-son relationship. It is important that we don't label our fathers, because unfortunately they too might have gone through hardships and we didn't understand, and they gave us love from their perspective. So it is time for us to look at our fathers and move them from father to daddy, if possible. Yes, some of them I know it's so hard to even think of them as dad. But look at them and give them credit for the things that they have done. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your coach. Like and share this video to anyone that may be struggling with daddy issues, because I struggle, so I know what that's like. So I shared my tips, the tips that I shared. Having to look at my father through different lenses gave me an opportunity to see him for who he was. He was my daddy. Thank you so much, and may God bless you. Bye-bye.